I'm related to Sarah Hood Bassett. She is my 8 times great-grandmother. And I'm also related to Samuel Gaskell and his wife Provided, who were not accused but had one of the women who was indeed accused living in their home. And so that person was taken out of their house in the middle of the night, according to what I read. So I knew that my family was old from Massachusetts, but my great-grandmother was a big Daughters of the American Revolution kind of person, really interested in that patriot, small p, patriot connection. And so I hadn't really heard, although I guess she knew, she was quite the genealogist, she knew that we were descended from someone who was involved in the witch trials, but she never shared that. And so I found out separately when I did Ancestry a few years ago. I thought I'd fill in my kids because my great-grandmother had it down to me, and I thought I'd fill in with my kids, and then gotta leave, you know.
And what was it like to make that connection?
Well, it was interesting because knowing that my great-grandmother then, when I went back to her information, because I talked to my dad's cousin who lives in Minnesota, and she's like, oh yeah, I remember that. We used to say that's why great-grandma was so scary, because her people were from, you know, witches. And I said, you knew that? And she said, yeah, that she knew, but I didn't know. And I thought it was really fabulous because the more I read, and there isn't very much about Sarah Hood particularly, although there's a lot written about the Bassett family that she married into. And it was really interesting what she survived. I mean, she was pregnant and had a 2-year-old by accounts with her as she was sitting in jail for months at a time. And so it sort of makes you feel like if she could endure that, you could pretty much struggle your way through just about anything you encounter in modern anthropology and medieval history and art history major. So one of the things that's always stunning to me is how much we can learn and yet still repeat the same kinds of mistakes as a society. And not just Western society, but we see these kinds of human behaviors and these tendencies to single out people as the other and to do incredibly awful things to them in the name of, you know, kind of the higher ground. And it goes on sort of cyclically, identifying people as other and separating them from ourselves and justifying all kinds of atrocities in the name of doing what's right and ridding ourselves from some people, some group that we fear. What happens is that all of a sudden you feel like this didn't happen to somebody else's. You're no longer an observer. It's really interesting how something that could happen 325 years ago to a person you've never met, but you realize you share their experience through the DNA in your skin, and you realize, okay, so this isn't really just one of those things that happens to other people and I should stand up for them. This could happen to anyone. You don't have to be a certain color or have a headscarf. It could happen to just good people. Good people have bad things happen to them because other people think that there's some collective good in isolating them. So if I could sit down with, for example, Sarah Bassett, I think as a mother, and I am not a real, you know, touchy-feely motherly person, but I cannot imagine being stuck in a jail cell with a ton of other people, pregnant in the summer with a 2-year-old. I just don't know what kind of fortitude it must have taken to just not give up or freak out, and I don't know that she didn't at some time feel like giving up or freaking out, but just from May, I think she was incarcerated in May and was not let out until December, and that baby was born at the end of December, beginning of January. How in heaven's name did you make it through that? That just seems like, especially when in that meantime, her brother-in-law was hanged, her sister-in-law was convicted and was pregnant, and so she was just waiting for news of her sister-in-law to deliver and be hanged. I can't imagine. And with all those kids at home she wasn't there for them. I can't imagine.